So this is an issue I've been wanting to talk about for some time. This is quite a cerebral matter. There's not like, wow, cool, whoa, look at that. It's more of a thinking thing. So if you're interested in, wow, cool, look at that, there's a playlist in the description called Warno memes, and that'll keep you entertained. For everybody else, this is an issue we really do need to address, especially with Broken Arrow coming out and everything. Warno has a serious team game imbalance. The Warsaw Pact is much stronger in team games than NATO, and the bigger the game, the more players there are, the stronger Pact is. So I shall now explain why that's the case. So we're going to divide this into the tabs, right? The tab, because you can bring all sorts of stuff in Warno. I'll just talk about the tabs in general and how Pact has an advantage in a lot of these tabs, and how that helps them win the game. So first of all, let's talk about the all tab and talk about how many units are there? 1,650. Yeah, no. In 1v1, right? NATO versus Pact doesn't really matter because you can search with any division you want. NATO versus NATO is allowed, Pact versus Pact is allowed, and overall it's pretty balanced. I'd actually say that NATO has a slight advantage in 1v1. So if we go through all these divisions here, you'll see that there are more NATO divisions, right? There's 3 more NATO than Pact in the game. And in terms of S tier NATO divisions, I'd say 9th US is S tier. I'd say 2nd Panzergren is S tier. 2nd UK is S tier. 5E is S tier, right? And 4th Dutch maybe S tier. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 S tier divisions. Whereas if you look at Pact, um, I personally really like Fourth Mott, and I think it's really good, but it's probably not S tier in most people's estimations. Pact's S tier divisions are basically 56Y, 119Y, right? Those are the S tier ones, the broken ones that need nerfing, basically. Whereas it has lots of A tier divisions, but certainly NATO has it beaten on S tier divisions. I'd also say 20th Polish is probably S tier. Um, just with the changes to the meta and so on. So NATO has more S tier divisions in 1v1, but in team it's NATO versus Pact, and it's almost always NATO versus Pact. You can't have mixed teams, NATO and Pact on one team. You just can't have it. There are probably mods that do it, but it's just not allowed. So either it's NATO versus NATO, Pact versus Pact, or NATO versus Pact. And all of the official servers, all the 10v10s, where this problem is most prevalent, they're all NATO versus Pact. So why does Pact have an advantage, right? So in team games, big team games tend to be played on big team maps, right? And this is a very typical map for the big team gamers. This is Cyrus. I was just playing it actually. And you'll notice that there's just a lot of open space. There's a lot of open space. Not every map's like this. Some of the new ones have made a really big attempt to solve this. But mainly it's all about open space. Tank country, right? Big open spaces, really long sight lines. And that's most of the map. You'll also note that the maps, 10v10 maps, are very compacted. So this map, I've played it with people in a 2v2 tournament. Like every 2v2 tournament has this map, and people are playing it 10v10. So the zone layout's different, but the map is just as wide. So, and in the big team games, everybody's, you know, shuttled together, and people like it. 10v10 is the most popular game mode, right? I'm not judging, I'm just here to point out the issues. So big open sight lines, very small forests, very small forests with big open sight lines, right? So the first thing, big open sight lines. Pact has a massive advantage in ATGMs, right? Because it gets these Bastion missiles. I suppose none of these have Bastions, but this is the best tank. We're not going to go through it tab by tab. I can't be bothered. Um, this is the best. Oh, we're starting with the tank tab. This is the best Pact tank, right? This is the best NATO tank. And this is pretty much emblematic of the way the game goes. So in a 1v1 fight between these two, in tank gun range, the Haha Abrams wins because it has more pen on the gun. And that's basically what matters, right? It's got more pen on the gun. But in these big open team game maps, What matters is range. And the TATUD outranges with its GLATAMs, stands for like barrel launched ATGM, gun launched ATGM, GLATAGMs. Anyway, it outranges it, right? It's not rocket science, it outranges it, so it gets the first hit in, or even the second hit, or even the third hit in, before the HARHAR can even shoot. So the NATO player has to just constantly smoke the whole map if he actually wants to move anywhere. And this is a very, very common problem, right? So PACT, NATO only gets one ground-based 2,800 meter range ATGM. It comes in one division, right? And it's the only 2,800 meter range ground-based ATGM that NATO gets. It is really good, but it comes in one division and you get four of them. And it's a little car, right? So the one on the left cannot survive a hit from the one on the right, but the one on the right can survive a hit from the one on the left. So if they're both shooting you, the Cook V, which is very appropriately named because NATO is getting cooked, has to leave because it's going to lose, right? And there's a lot of this going around. So PACT gets an absolute bunch of these 2,800 meter range ATGMs. This is the most common one, right? So it's on a bunch of T-55s, so a bunch of divisions get these. It's on T-62s, they get them as well, so that's some more divisions with max range ATGMs. Lots of max range ATGMs. But instead of calling them 2,800, we just call them max range, because they are maximum range. T-62s get them. Even T-72s now have started getting 2,800 meter range ATGMs, right? So PACT has a huge advantage in open country because of these things, and it doesn't just extend to tanks. They also get like really cheap 2,800 meter range ATGMs in the form of, you know, all of these things. Like, look how many divisions get them, right? I'm going to look at this actually. There's also the BMP3 which gets them, right? So that's more divisions, and the BMD3, which does it? No, it doesn't. It just gets another one, but it's not max range. So out of all the PACT divisions, I'm going to count the ones that get max range ATGMs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Do they get it? In fact, does 25th get it? Let's double check. I need to get this right. These are long range, but they are not max range. So 25th does not get it. Does 35Y get it? We're on about ground-based ATGMs. Obviously, helicopters, there's lots of them, right? We'll get to helicopters. So no, these guys don't get it. 35th Y doesn't get it. 56 does. 76 I think doesn't. Let's just double check. No, it does not. These guys do because they get the 100mm, which we just spoke about. Yep. These guys do. These guys obviously do. These guys do. 7th, I don't think does. So yeah, like I said, this is very cerebral. I probably should have done this beforehand, actually, but I just thought of it. 9th definitely does. KDA does. Berlin Grupperungs, I can't remember. Yeah, they do. Rugener probably doesn't, actually. And the Poles tend not to, from what I remember. Yeah, Rugener doesn't. And then Poles, I don't think any of the Poles do. So out of the NATO divisions that get max range ground-based ATGMs, you have one. Out of the PACT divisions, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You have 11. Right? Like, basically, like, more than half of them. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19. Yeah, so more than half of them get max range ATGMs. So that gives PACT a huge advantage in team games, right? And we're only just getting started because that's ATGMs. Let's talk about... that's tanks and ATGMs, right? Let's talk about artillery. So artillery, PACT is a clear winner. They get a bunch of rocket arty. The Smirch is really good, right? They just get better artillery across the board. The Grads, basically every PACT division, almost every PACT division gets some form of Grad, right? So, you know, you see 3, and another 5, and another 3, so that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, you know. And then you also get another set called... it's like the BM24s, so 12, 13, RM70s, 14, 15, 16, right? Out of the ones that get MLRS, it's almost every div, actually. I think it might actually just be all of them. I'll have to check 25th. And MLRS is very, very useful. So yeah, they get it. What Soviet div doesn't? I think 119Y doesn't get MLRS. No, it gets the burrito, which is kind of different, but it's still MLRS, right? So basically, you get a huge amount of rocket artillery on PACT. And now, when the map is basically big open field followed by small town, as we saw in Cyrus, very typical experience, or even just big town, PACT is gonna win because they get their ATGMs to cover the open fields. They're the king of the open fields, and then they get their rocket arty to take out the town. So that's ATGMs, PACT advantage. Rocket arty, PACT advantage, right? Let's talk about anti-air. Anti-air is a huge PACT advantage, right? You get the Krug. It's the only thing that one-shots anybody. We've been told that Britain will get the Bloodhound, who knows when. But even then, the Krugs, there's multiple divs that have Krugs, 2 for now, right? Loads of divs get Cubs, which are self-propelled, very, very long-range RT. They don't one-shot. Then they get the Bucks, more Cubs, Cubs of different nations, right? So when this says, it's not just these 4, because this is the DDR Cub, right? And then there's the Soviet Cub, and then there's the Polish Cub, right? And then the DDR Krug, and so on. So, you know, I'm not going to labour this point too much because anybody who plays the game already knows that PACT gets better AA. And that makes sense because in real life, PACT invested a lot in anti-air, right? Whereas NATO preferred to use its fighters, which we'll get onto. NATO's equivalent, NATO's only match is the IHawk, which is like the Cub with the range, but it's less available. It's more expensive because you've got to keep the vehicle with it. It is actually slightly longer range, right? The IHawk is really good, but it is towed. And so I prefer the Cubs because you can get more of them, you can just sort of spam them out. But the IHawk is very good, and, you know, quite a few divisions do get it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 out of, what was it, 21 or 24 or something? Sorry, my voice is going. So, overall, clear advantage for PACT in terms of long-range AA. In terms of short-range AA, NATO does have an advantage, actually. The advantage is, I'm just going to go get a glass of water because this is getting silly, I can barely speak. I'll just edit this part out. Sorry about that brief edit there, I just had to refill my water. The stream is sponsored by water, stay hydrated. So, PACT, much better long-range AA. Short-range AA, NATO does have a small advantage because the Gepard is really good. And the West Germans get the Gepard, right? And there's also the Cheetah, that's really good. The Stinger beats the Igla, so Stinger is a man-pad, man-portable air defense systems. And the Stinger beats the Igla, right? In general, PACT man-pads are worse, because the Stinger... Oh, the Igla's been buffed quite a bit, actually. Wow. The main difference is 4 versus 5 damage, so a Stinger will 2-shot a 10 HP plane, whereas an Igla needs 3 hits, and it's got less accuracy. So the Stinger is better, right? And you've also got the Minstrel on France, which has even longer range. So NATO has better SHORAD, right? You've got, like, the SAS and stuff like that, who have, you know, Stingers. So NATO does have better short-range air defense, but PACT has better long-range air defense. What matters more in team? Long-range air defense, because the sightlines are longer, right? So you're not going to be ambushing somebody with a Stinger. Generally, you're going to be hitting them with a Cub while they come across the open field or through the air. Let's talk about air. So, in real life, the reason that NATO didn't invest in long-range air defense is because they focused loads on their air force. They trained their pilots a lot more than the Soviets. They put a lot more effort into the air force. The Warsaw Pact, on an economic standpoint, could not compete with NATO in the air, which is why they invested so much into anti-air. Makes sense, right? So how is this reflected in game? The fact that NATO has the better planes and PACT has the better AA, right? How is that reflected in game? Well, it's not. In game, PACT also has the advantage in the air. So this is NATO's longest range missile. This is NATO's best missile. You get it in 2 divisions. The one that you're going to see more often is the AIM-7M Sparrow, which is also the Skyflash Super Temp. So, you know, AMRAAM's great, but max range 7775. The reason the AMRAAM is better is because it's fire and forget, which means it shoots them off faster. But let's look. But yeah, the range is the same. PACT has an entirely new class, or an entirely above this class of range, which is the long-range strategic air defense kind of interceptors, right? Meant to intercept nuclear bombers, the MiG-31s. So their max range is 12 kilometers, and these come on 1, 2, 3. Well, okay, 2 divisions. These are the same. So, okay, they get those, and you would assume at some point they will add the Tomcat. I would just assume so. I don't have any prior knowledge of this, but it would be weird if they didn't add the US Marines at some point. So you'd assume at some point they would add the Tomcat, and that should have similar range to the MiG-31, but it's not in the game. So in these big games, with these big maps, not only does PACT have the better air defense on the ground, it also has the better air defense in the air, because it's got longer range on these missiles. But that's not the end of the story, because it also has better medium-range missiles, if you want to call it that. So look at the Eagle for 270 points, right? The missile, look at the missile, the long-range missile. The PACT's long-range missile, PACT's best medium-range missile, has longer range than NATO's best medium-range missile. It also has more accuracy than NATO's best medium-range missile. PACT also has the best short-range missile. As you can see before you, those 2 short-range missiles, that's NATO's best on the right, and it's PACT's best on the left. The PACT one just has more suppression for no reason. And these planes, generally, the PACT planes are better equipped. So Eagles in general are overpriced. I sort of see that as a general issue, a separate issue. So like the Eagle in general is overpriced. The Su-27S in general is underpriced. Like the Eagle should be cheaper. The Su-27 is a better plane. It turns better than the Eagle in this game, which means that after they pass each other, the Su-27 will actually get another 2 missiles off in the merger, even if they're both evacing. Right? They'll both pass each other, and then the Su will hit the Eagle, and the Eagle won't be able to hit the Su-27. So the the Su-27 was known for being maneuverable, right? So okay, fair enough, right? But it's just way, way, way better. So yeah, PACT gets an entirely new class of planes, or entirely above class of planes that NATO has absolutely no match for, which massively outranges everything. PACT's medium-range fighters are also better than NATO's medium-range fighters. They're also more abundant, because you get divisions like 119Y, which and like the MiG-29 also gets these missiles, so they get a lot of these missiles, and you can just bring. Whoa, look at that! You know, there's a lot of MiG-29s in this game, and they've all got this missile. Or most of them have this missile, and most of them have this missile. So, yeah. PACT is much, much, much better in terms of the fighter superiority. So let's talk about the bombers. PACT also has better bombers, because not only do they have access to... So all of their airframes keep getting buffed over and over and over again. So like the Su-24M, for example, has 30% ECM now. So here is the cluster one, and you compare that to the British Tornado. So the PACT ones, they had their ECM buffed, right? And now it's got the same ECM as the Tornado, but the price didn't go up. So it's actually got a bigger payload than the Tornado, but it reloads in the same amount of time because it's done off number of bombs, but it's 35 points cheaper. You might say I'm just picking examples out of a hat, but no, this is symptomatic of something that just happens across the whole game. So because all the SU-24Ms got buffed, their prices never went up. So all the NATO stuff with 30% ECM is way more expensive than all the PACT stuff with 30% ECM. So here's the other Tornado, right? The SU-24 is better. The only advantage of the Tornado is that it also doubles as like a pseudo ASF. In 1v1 that can matter. In team games that doesn't matter. PACT also has more on the cheaper range stuff, which you'd expect to see, right? But PACT also has more on the cheaper range of bombers as well. So it's better on the high end, right? It's also got more LGBTs, and the LGBTs are better. So like this thing, for example, it drops these one at a time, and they just one-shot tanks. This thing, it drops them one at a time, it one-shots tanks. Whereas NATO's best ones don't really do that, so that the Strike Eagle is probably NATO's best one. Costs more, and it will one-shot heavy tanks because it drops two at once. So it is pretty good. That's why it costs more. And so yeah, NATO does have something to counter this. But yeah, in terms of the short-range stuff, so if you look at, for example, the Harrier short-range ASF, so this is 3 availability, 110 points, 8 HP, okay. So you compare it to the MiG-21 AA2. So this is 4 availability, right? And it's faster. It's got a bit less ECM, but it is faster. It's got 4 availability, and it's got 2 racks of missiles, right? And this is also reflected across all the bombers. So because PACT gets so many MiG-21 bombers, it's got a lot more cheap bombers as well, which are very, very cost-effective. So let's recap. PACT is better in the open field with the ATGMs, and the tanks get ATGMs, and so on. And because there's no realistic reverse speeds, PACT tanks can just reverse as fast as they go forwards, and so PACT has an advantage there. PACT has an advantage in artillery, gets better MLRS, and more prevalent MLRS. In terms of long-range tube RT, NATO is basically the same as PACT. Akatsias versus M109s. In terms of anti-air, PACT has much better long-range anti-air. It's just more prevalent, right? Prevalence is a big part of it, right? They just get more of their divs get more stuff, which in a big team game, 10v10, it's going to matter a lot. So PACT has better long-range AR, more prevalent long-range AR. NATO's only answer is the Toad Ihawk, which doesn't come on as many divisions as you get Cubs, Bucks, Krugs, right? There's no NATO one-shot long-range thing, right? There's no Krug equivalent on NATO. Maybe we'll see that in the Bloodhound. It'll be on one division. Maybe it'll be good. We don't know yet. In terms of short-range AA, NATO has a small advantage. Great. So NATO does have a small advantage there. In terms of fighters, PACT has better long-range fighters. It's got better medium-range fighters. It's got better short-range fighters. It's got better big bombers. It's got better small bombers, right? NATO gets nothing, basically. What else do I want to talk about? Close-range tanks. So we've spoken about long-range tanks, right? PACT also just gets better tanks, actually. Let's just talk about tanks. So we already covered the fact that they get, all their tanks get these ATGMs. Really, really, really useful in team games. They also get better mediums. They get better mediums than NATO. So a T-72 is the quintessential medium tank. And you compare that to a Chieftain, right? So the Chieftain does the same pen at the same range, right? The Chieftain is slower. The Chieftain has less top armor, which is very important when it comes to artillery. The T-72 has 3 top armor. It's the only medium in the game that has 3 top armor. So NATO's mediums are worse, right? The T-72 has better anti-infantry capability. The T-72 is faster. It goes forwards and backwards faster, right? So what's the advantage of the It's just worse. It's just worse. And it also fires a lot slower, right? The accuracy is 5% more. And it's got 1 more pip of range, at which point it reverses and the T-72 goes forwards faster. So this is symptomatic of, in general, PACT just has better mediums because the T-72 is overpowered at the moment for its price to performance. PACT also has better light tanks. We use the term light tank to define bad tanks, all right? We're not defining it's not actually physically light. PACT's T-55s got buffed last patch, so they now fire at 5 ROF, which is better than a chieftain, right? What is the NATO light tank? It doesn't really exist as a concept, the NATO light tank. You would have to look at Leopard 1s. So the Leopard 1 is much worse than the T-55, it really is. The T-55, it's not got smoke, but there's lots of T-55s. And in general, the T-55 line is overperforming because they raised the ROF in the last patch. It wasn't in any of the patch notes. And so now it fires at base 8, which means effectively it's always 9, because you always 1-vet your tanks minimum. So it's firing at 9 rounds per minute, this T-55. It's now, better than a Leopard, and it's competing with the Chieftain. So PACT has better high-end tanks because of the ATGMs, whatever, right? In a 1v1, as we spoke about right at the start, between a HA and a TAUD, in a 1v1, you'd expect the HA to win, because as long as it maneuvers properly, so it's not just running at it over an open field, it should win. But in a team game, it's just a big open field, so the HA loses. And so it's got better high-end tanks, because of the range. It's got better medium tanks, because the T-72s are cracked, and it's got better light tanks, because the T-55s are also overpowered. And NATO's basically got nothing going for it in this space. So we've spoken about the tanks, we've spoken about the artillery, we've spoken about the air, we've spoken about the AA, so I guess I am going through it tab by tab. Infantry. So NATO has actually, across the board, slightly better infantry than PACT. It depends, actually. I'd say it's kind of neck and neck. It depends. So basically, PACT gets Spetsnaz on a lot of divisions, and Spetsnaz are proper cracked, right? And then you look at something like Mott Schutzen, a really, really, really good squad. So all the East German guys, they all get the Resolute trait. It makes their infantry a lot better. But NATO tends to be able to compete with PACT on an infantry footing, right? 2nd UK's got good infantry. Some of the American divs have good infantry, especially like 6th US with the Navy SEALs. They're a match for Spetsnaz. So in general, I'd say infantry is about even, simply because there are 450 infantry units in this game. So between NATO and PACT, it's why is this an infantry unit? Oh, because it's a transport. Okay, so there's slightly lower than 450 infantry units, but between NATO and PACT, with so many different types of infantry, I'd say NATO might be slightly better, but it really does depend. It's mainly because there's more NATO divs, so some of the divs have better infantry, but then some of the PACT divs have better infantry, so it's kind of neck and neck. Artillery we spoke about. Logistics, I mean, they're even on logistics. Everybody gets access to supply helos, armoured supply, wheeled supply. That's all fine. Recon, I'd say, is even as well. Everybody gets access to recon helos. Everybody gets access to... So now both sides get access to recon tanks. 11th ACAV's M1 ACAV. M1A1 ACAV is obviously better than 25th Soviet's T-64 BV recon. But in general, it's kind of even, right? So PACT actually has an advantage in some sectors here because they get this massive preponderance of exceptional optics BRM1s. So, like, almost every PACT div has these. This is just the DDR one. And they've got exceptional optics, and you get 6 of them per card. Whereas NATO has no equivalent to that. They get all of theirs that have exceptional optics. So this is very good optics. 1 armor, no smoke. All of theirs that have exceptional optics are all 4 per card, whereas all the PACT ones are 6. I'm trying to think of who's actually got one. So, like, all the NATO ones are like this. They tend to be cheaper, less armoured, and they're only 4 availability. All the PACT ones, all the BRM ones are 6. PACT also has the Razvedka BMP-2, which is overperforming massively at the moment, mainly because, so let's say I want to buy... I'm 82nd Airborne, I want an autocannon vehicle. Here it is, the LAV 3 availability. A Fox would be 4, a Lux would be 4, right? Whereas PACT gets Razvedka BMP2s on a lot of divisions. A lot of divisions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 get Razvedka BMP2s. I could have sworn there was like a East, Poland got one. Am I wrong there? Okay, that's just a BMP1. It's not as bad. It's fine. BMP1, Razvedka BMP1s aren't a problem. Look, another 6 availability thing, right? Basically, almost every pack div gets, or every packed armor div gets this, basically. And a bunch of the infantry ones do, like 4th Mot as well. So, I can't remember what I was saying. Razvedka BMP2s. The reason that Razvedka BMP2 is better is because it comes as a transport, which means its availability is tied to the unit. NATO has no equivalent of this. The Recon Bradleys aren't a transport option for no good reason, right? They should be. They should carry 2 guys as like a dismountable sniper squad or something like that. But there's just none of that. That's not in the game. And so all of PACT's Razvedka BMP2s come at 6 per card. And this unit is really, really powerful. It costs quite a bit, but the idea is you're getting 6 per card, so it's more than NATO. So in a way, I'd actually say that, and especially in team games, that matters a lot. So I'd actually say that PACT has an advantage in Recon, because it's got the better exceptional optics for your long range looking, and it's got the Razvedka BMP2s, which have no equivalent, basically. But that's not like a big difference. Helicopters, that's kind of even. What I will say is, so NATO has the advantage in that there are a lot of divs with Apaches. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, whatever. So lots of divs get Apaches, and what did they do? They're like, the Apache's too strong, what should we do? We need to buff all the PACT stuff. So they buffed up all the PACT stuff. So the so now the Phalanger does 20 pen, and the Kokon, this used to do like 16 or 14, now it does 20, and the Kokon now has the max range missile. So that was one advantage that NATO had over PACT, and they took it away. So now every div with Kokons gets the max range missile. It's got less pen, but they've still got max range ATGMs, whereas they didn't have those before, except on the Akula, which is in 35Y, right? So they used to only have max range on the Akula, but they said, clearly, NATO has an advantage here, let's get rid of it. So now the Kokons go 2,800 meters, and they're super fast, and they're super accurate, and they do high pen, right? Not super accurate. So on helicopters, it's even, because it is actually slightly NATO favored, because the Hellfire is better. Even though this comes up in red, right? It is even. Let's give the devil his due. Even though that one's red and that one's blue, and that one's green and that one's yellow, even though, they're the same range, and yellow you'd assume would be better than green. I mean, this game is a mess, really. The Hellfire is better than the Kokon, so NATO does get better helicopters. And that's basically everything. So Logi is even, infantry is even, artillery PACT advantage, tanks PACT advantage, recon PACT advantage, AA PACT advantage, long range, right? Especially for team games. Helicopters, slight NATO advantage, air PACT advantage in basically all sectors. So that's the end of the video. PACT has the advantage in every single sector except one, and their advantage in the helicopter... NATO's advantage in the helicopter tab is marginal. So, I mean, I'd love to see some win statistics from Eugene. I've been asking for this for a long time. Show us the 10v10 win statistics. Who's winning more often? Because everything points towards PACT having a massive advantage over NATO in team games. And with Broken Arrow coming out, I think the team game balance there seems to be a lot better than the team game balance here, really. 1v1, like I said, it doesn't matter because you just focus on individual divisions and tweak individual divisions. But if you actually zoom out and take a look at this as a whole, PACT is just winning basically everywhere, except the Apache. So what should they do about this? Basically, give NATO better stuff. Stop buffing everything weak on PACT. Everything weak on PACT gets buffed constantly. So the T-55's got better, the T-72's got better, the Phalanger's got better, the Kokon's got better, the Malyuka's got better, the unnameable ATGM got better. What else got better? the other things tended to just be added better, whereas these were things were actively changed because PACT didn't have it. Oh yeah, even something like the BRDM2 Conkers, right? This used to have mediocre stealth, and so PACT didn't have the kind of Iltis Milan spam that NATO gets a lot more of these small trucks, right? Whereas PACT got the BRDM2s, which had mediocre stealth. What did they do? They changed all the BRDM2s to have to have good stealth instead of mediocre, so that PACT would have that capability as well. So, woebetide team game players in Warno, basically, it's very stacked, and the bigger the team game, the more apparent it is. For something like 2v2, you can still play NATO. In 1v1, you can still play NATO, but the bigger it gets, the more the PACT advantages stack up, because it's mainly about range and availability. So I hope you enjoyed this. I mean, it wasn't a very happy topic. If you want to support the channel, please like the video and check out some of my other videos. And I'd like to thank the generous channel joiners, generously joining the channel. They get their names on the screen, they get the videos early, they get members exclusive videos at a rate of 1 per week. A great way to support the channel. I'm currently unemployed, which is why I'm moulding about a niche French strategy video game title, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.